Let you know a little secret. That M5 I'm driving, not my car. The M5 you're driving, not your car. So as you know, and I've told you this several times, I love my job. I play with cars for a living, essentially. I've had friends tell me, I work for a living, you play with cars, and it's true. Yes, I would have loved to have been a retired IndyCar star at this, actually GTP star. I wanted to race Group C cars, and that didn't happen. But as a constellation career, it's not bad. I work for all my favorite manufacturers mostly, and some others. I work a lot for Ferrari North America and Ferrari SPA sometimes, BMW North America, Audi, Tesla, McLaren. The only company I love and I've never worked for officially is Porsche. Currently, we're doing a program for BMW called BMW M Track Days, and it's $495 for half a day. You get to come out, you get to drive everything M that's currently on the market. You get to do this really cool drag race into a stop box exercise with somebody in exactly the same car. You get to do a timed autocross, and of course you get eternal bragging rights if you happen to be the fastest person of your day or within that city. And then the big draw is you get to drive on track, lead follow with instructors in the M8 competition and the M5 competition. So it's an experience more than a driving school, but the idea behind that program is to sort of plant the hook to get you to go to one of the performance centers, either the one on the East Coast in South Carolina or the one on the West Coast in California, and spend money to do a one-day M school, which is about a $1,500 a day program. This particular story I'm going to tell happened during BMW's M Track Days this year in 2020. So I have to start by saying I'm so proud to work for BMW because they are the first manufacturer during this whole craziness of COVID this year that has decided to kick things off and get us back to work. Now I understand everybody has to be careful, and I understand why other people haven't chosen to go back to work, but I'm proud to represent a brand that is getting after it and saying, no, let's kick things off and get back to it. So the M Track Days were supposed to kick off in April. The Rona happened, as I call it, and we had 3 cancellations. We canceled Circuit of the Americas. We were going to be in Road Atlanta. We canceled that. We kept canceling programs, and finally I got the call from my direct boss saying, hey, would you be willing to quarantine in New York for 14 days so that we could kick off this program at the Monticello Motor Club? This is now August. And I'm sitting at home like the rest of you, eager to get back to work and make a living, because how the hell am I going to pay my bills? And so I said, absolutely. And I think I was the third guy down the list of the handful that BMW has that can lead these that they have lead these programs. And I was the third that they called, and the first one that was willing to go sacrifice 2 weeks of my life. So I quarantined in New York, and then we go upstate to work the program. But I was fully convinced that I was going to be on day 8, 9, or 10 of the quarantine and get the call like, we're sending you back home because no one's signing up. Because as I was following the registration for the other cities, I could see nobody signing up. But as cheesy as it sounds, it was heartwarming to see the day started filling up as my quarantine was ending. And sure enough, when we kicked off the program, we were sold out. We had a couple days where we had some slots, but for the most part, you just could tell people were eager to get back to something approaching normal and to kick their lives back off. So we started doing the program. It's amazing. We're selling out. It's great to be amongst my friends, my coworkers, among these awesome cars, driving cars on a racetrack, meeting like-minded people. Amazing. The last day of the program comes up, and we usually end on a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday, and those almost always sell out. So this, no exception, this day it's sold out. Last day, how the day works out, the structure of the day, people show up, they register, there's about an hour of them, eating whatever, we feed them for breakfast. And then at some point when we're getting ready to kick the program off, we gather everybody around, we go into a classroom. And in this case, the challenge was keeping everybody 6 feet apart because we have 56 people in the classroom. But we had a big garage at Monticello, and we separated the chairs. And I was standing back a good 12 feet from anybody, but because of optics, I still had to wear the mask. So I did a 45-minute talk with a mask on, which is not fun. Plus, a lot of the expressions and how you communicate to someone, this is a joke, you should laugh now, lost because I'm wearing a mask. So at least that's my excuse for my talks not going over so well. Not that I was rusty from not working. I'm gathering the people up, we're sold out. And I see, as I'm in registration gathering those folks that were lagging, I see a bit of a commotion at the registration desk. And so I walk over there, and Carl, young guy who handles registration, who is awesome, but young guy, not super experienced, is kind of having a hard time with this gentleman. And this gentleman is frustrated and getting a little bit more, not aggressive, but a little bit more riled up by the fact that he can't get whatever he wants. And so I step in to see what's going on. And it turns out he bought a slot, so he paid $495 to be there and have a spot. and brought his dad along, who was probably in his mid-60s, early to mid-60s, and thought he could just buy a slot for his dad, but we're sold out, so can't help him. So then he turns to me and goes, well, that's fine, but then I want to switch spots with my dad, which is what I told this guy, Carl, the registration guy. And Carl turns to me and goes, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem generally, but he doesn't have his driver license. Now, there are certain rules on that program that, as the lead, I can't bend. If you turn off stability and traction control, DSC, dynamic stability control, you're going to be an honorary instructor standing next to me the rest of the day. You're no longer driving. You're out. I cannot bend that rule. If you show up without a driver's license, even if you paid for the program, you can't drive, because what if you have a suspended license or, God forbid, no license at all? We put you out there, something happens. So we can't bend that rule. And so I'm explaining this to the guy, and he's kind of not having it. And so then I turn to Carl, and I'm trying to solve the problem, right? And the guy starts talking to his father in Spanish, and I'm like, okay, perfect opportunity, native Spanish speaker. There's just this thing that happens when you connect with somebody in their native language, and I'm thinking maybe this will diffuse the situation. So I interrupt him, and I try to explain it to his father, help him explain it to his father. And I can see him, he's hesitating to say something to me, and he finally stops me, and he pulls me off to the side, away from his dad, and he goes, here, the thing is, my dad just got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And he tells me that, and I remember just like this lump in my throat, like instantly I'm like, this guy's got to drive. We got to make this happen. You make that battlefield decision, and you're like, all right. So I decide, okay, here's what we're going to do. You stay in the class as you signed up, because it dawned on me, so as the lead, and again, I'm only the lead because I'm the only sucker that was willing to quarantine for 2 weeks. As the lead, once I do that 45-minute talk in the morning, I do that again in the afternoon for the afternoon group. There's 2 groups per day usually. And once I do that, I float. I'm the floater. I go around making sure everything's in place. If there's some kind of issue, I try to solve it. Sometimes the floater, if there's someone particularly slow on the lead follow and they're holding up a group, they'll kick him off. And we do have a guy that's actually just floating, but I'm the second floater, all right? So it dawned on me, I'm the floater. I don't really have that much I have to do between now and the afternoon session. I'm going to take this guy one-on-one. So I speak to the father and the son, get them together. I'm like, all right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go in the program, and you and I are together. I introduce myself. We chat a little bit. And the son's like, dude, you don't know, this is amazing you're doing this. My dad's a hardcore car guy. He loves cars, da-da-da. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm thinking we've got the thing solved. And so we go off, and a couple of the exercises, like the drag race, would have been tough to fit him in because, again, we're sold out, and all the people, there's one person per car kind of a thing. And so I presented to him, like, if you want to do the drag race, we can kind of wait for the group to end in between. And he's like, no, I just want to drive on the track. So I'm like, that's perfect, because all I have to do now is find 2 cars that aren't being used, and we'll drive on track, one-on-one, instructor, participant, lead, follow. And so I go and I get 2 M5 competitions, because the lead follow is an M5 comps and an M8 competition models. So I get 2 M5s. I explain to him the rules. The first rule is that you follow exactly my wheel tracks. The second rule is that you don't fall behind too much, 3 to 5 car lengths, we typically say. And if you see that the participants, sometimes you have a train of cars, are following those 2 guidelines, every subsequent lap is a little faster until eventually you run into the limit for that group, and it's 1 person, right? So we can only go as fast as the slowest person in the group, and then that's the limit of that group. I got 1 guy, so I'm gonna go as fast as he can go. So we get out in the M5s, and the other guys are doing their longer talks for their group, to have a group of people. I just gave this guy a quick brief, and I'm trying to get out on track before the other groups. We get on a track in the M5s, and I'm cruising around. I give him a slow orientation lap, telling him the various points. We have apex cones and track out cones, and we have everything out there on the track to make it as simple as possible for them. 1 orientation lap, relatively slow, and then you start building pace, and you're trying to establish a rhythm and continue building from there. So I start trying to build the pace up, and he's lagging, and I'm like, God, this guy's so into cars, he's got to be faster than this. And so I do 2 laps, and I can't get the guy to pick up the pace, even on the straights, where I'm like, I know they went faster on the freeway on the way to the damn event, and I can't get him to go down the straight. So I tell him on the radio, we're going to come in the pit lane, and I get out and I walk back to his car. And as I get to his car, the guy's in tears. And I'm like, oh, why is he upset? And he was just stoked. He couldn't believe this was happening, right? And so I'm sitting there and I'm squatting down at his door, and I'm like, oh God, here come the waterworks, right? And you know how sometimes you joke around to kind of like make light of something and not sort of let the emotions get the best of you. And so I just said to the guy, I'm like, listen, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And this is all in Spanish, by the way, so probably not what I should have been saying to a participant, but I'm like, let you in on a little secret. That M5 I'm driving, not my car. The M5 you're driving, not your car. Let's go out there and tear it up, essentially, right? Lost in translation. I said something to that effect in Spanish. And the guy smiled, and I could tell he was kind of like getting back to being where he was. Jump in the car, we take off, and now he's on it, and we build pace. And he ended up doing 2 or 3 times more laps than he would have if he was normally in the program. At some point, we stopped in the M5s. I couldn't find another M8, but I found the one for him, so I led him around the M5. And it was funny because after we stopped, he was joking around. He's like, "Oh, your car was faster than mine." I'm like, "Well, I may have a little more experience than you, is why I was pulling away from you." And he wasn't having it. He's like, "No, the M5 is better than the M8." I'm like, "All right." But the cool thing about it was, so the program ended. We now meet with his son at the end, and the guy, the kid, I call him the son, could not have been more grateful and wouldn't stop saying thank you, to the point where you're like, "No, dude, we get it. I'm just happy it worked out." And the thing is, it's not something that we did. It's not something that I did that day. I know that my direct boss, had I called him, and I did call him later, would not have hesitated to say, "Do exactly that." And I know that his bosses at BMW North America would not have hesitated to say, "Yes, do exactly what you did," right? And so what I love about that, I love my industry for lots of things. Look, the cars is the most obvious thing, right? I get to drive some of the coolest cars on the planet. Some of my best friends, people that will be my friends for life, I've met in this job. The places we go to, Sepang Formula One track, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, China, Europe. I mean, it's amazing. But the people that you don't know that you meet and the experiences that you get to share with these strangers are incredible. And the fact that that day I was working for a company that, not only am I proud of that company because they build badass cars, M cars, but also because the people at the company get it. And it's not just that they get the cars, they get the bigger picture. They get what's important. I mean, I can't imagine anything more important than that you're working for folks that they recognize what's important and they have your back when you do the right thing. And so that was just an amazing day that I can't, I'm so grateful I was there to experience it.
Now, obviously at VINwiki, we love all of our sponsors, but first amongst equals would certainly be AutoTempest. Not only have they supported the channel for the last 3 years, but they've made some of our favorite projects possible, like Car Trek. It is honestly the first place that I look when I'm going to look for my next car, so these days that's about every morning. So we love AutoTempest, and it does make it easier than ever to find your dream car. They compile all the major listings from all the major sites into one easy search. Their motto is all the cars, one search, and it certainly is a great tool for that. So be sure to check them out at the link in the description below and thank them for their continued support of VINwiki.